They don't hate you because you did anything wrong. They hate you because they can't figure out how someone like you even exists. Let that sink in. You didn't scream. You didn't fight. You didn't even try to stand out. But your silence was louder than their whole personality. Your presence was enough to shake their whole system. It's like walking into a room where everyone's been pretending to be rich. And then you walk in wearing something simple, and suddenly no one wants to flex anymore. That's what your energy does. It breaks the illusion. Here's a wild fact. Studies show it takes just 7 seconds for people to decide how they feel about you. Not based on what you say, but on how you make them feel. That's how fast they're sizing you up. And you're the glitch in their simulation. You're not behaving like what they're used to. You're calm, but powerful. Quiet, but dangerous. Real in a world that thrives on fake. And they can't handle it. And thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing the like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. And thank you again, chosen one, for being part of this mission. You're not just watching, you're part of a force. Now let's talk about what's really going on. You didn't ask for attention, but they gave it to you anyway. You didn't chase validation, but somehow you became the standard. You didn't even want to lead, but your footsteps keep turning into blueprints for people who swore they were ahead of you. It's confusing them. It's bothering them, because you weren't supposed to rise this high, this fast, this clean. They're mesmerized by you, but they won't admit it out loud. Instead, they'll copy you in silence and criticize you in public. They're watching your every move like it's their favorite show, yet pretending they're not fans. You became their obsession, their competition, their quiet crisis, just by existing. Some of them are mentally stuck. They're asking themselves, how did this person come out of nowhere and shake up everything? It's like you cracked their mirror, and now they can't unsee their own insecurities. You showed up and suddenly they're doubting everything about themselves, their looks, their plans, their personality. You didn't try to be better, you just were. You showed up real in a world that's been playing pretend for too long. That's what shocked them. That's what scared them. You walk with an energy they can't fake, a calm power that exposes their noise. And no matter how hard they try to copy your glow, they burn out. Because this wasn't built from hype. This was built from pain, from silence, from isolation, from choosing healing over hiding. And when you walk in carrying that energy, they feel it. Some admire it. Others panic. Because now they've realized someone like you exists. And once people realize that someone like you exists, it changes everything. You shattered their version of what's possible. You're the reality check they never saw coming. You're not just different, you're disruptive. And let's be honest, you're not even doing your final form yet. You're holding back. You're still evolving. This isn't even your full volume, and it's already too loud for them. That's why some keep their distance. That's why others stare too long. That's why some come close just to steal pieces of you, hoping they can understand how you move the way you do. But let's keep it real. They wouldn't survive a week with your soul, because what they see as confidence is really scars you stitched together by yourself. What they call energy is your spirit bouncing back from all the betrayal, abandonment, and silent battles you had to win alone. They're not mesmerized by your image. They're hypnotized by your survival. You confuse them because you're unbothered in situations that would have destroyed them. You smile with secrets they'll never understand. You're the kind of person people can't control, can't fake, and can't forget. And now that you've arrived, their world's different. They're realizing that what they thought was rare isn't even close to what you bring to the table. You're the reminder that real still exists. That authentic, still wins. That quiet power is louder than their loud ego. So what did you do to them? You disrupted their lies with your truth. You shook their fake confidence with your calm presence. You made them realize that all the pretending in the world can't match the aura of someone who healed in private and now walks in peace. You did what they can't copy. You became yourself, fully and unapologetically. And now they're stuck, obsessed, curious, threatened, inspired. Some want to love you, some want to be you, but none of them can ignore you. You've entered their minds without permission, and now you live there rent-free, and they're trying to figure out what just happened. But here's the thing, they won't find the answer in a mirror, because you're not something they can reflect. You're something they have to experience, and that scares the hell out of them. And listen closely. Chosen one, if you've made it this far, your spirit already knows this message was meant for you. You're not here by accident. You're here because something in you can feel the shift happening. So don't scroll away now. What's coming next is going to unlock some things you've felt but never had words for. If you're ready to fully own what makes people stare, freeze, and lose their balance around you, drop the number 777 in the comments to claim it. And if this message already hit something deep, consider showing love to the crew behind it with a super thanks. Every little bit fuels this mission forward. Doesn't matter if it's a cent or a stack, it all keeps this energy moving. Now lock in, chosen one, because what's coming next is personal. Let's break it down step by step. And believe me, you're going to want to hear every word. Let's go. Number 1, you didn't shatter their ego. You showed them it was made of glass. They weren't intimidated by your power. They were exposed by your presence. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't brag. You didn't walk in with fireworks. You just breathed. You just existed. And somehow that was enough to make their entire self-image start crumbling. That's the part they'll never say out loud. That's the part that haunts them. They thought they were untouchable until you walked in and made the air feel different. Not louder, not heavier, just real. You didn't speak over people. You didn't perform. You didn't need to, because what you carry doesn't come from applause. It comes from pressure. Your presence feels like truth they're not ready to face, like a mirror they didn't ask for but can't look away from. And that's when the cracks started. They built their confidence on followers, fake praise, groupthink, and the illusion of being the main character. You built yours in silence, in dark nights, in seasons where no one clapped, but you kept going anyway. That's why when you walk in, they get confused. How are you calm when they're desperate for attention? How are you magnetic without even trying? How are you still standing when they swore someone like you wouldn't survive? Because they were playing a game. You were surviving a war. They don't hate you because you did something wrong. They hate you because next to your truth, their entire identity feels like a lie. Your stillness screams louder than their shouting ever could. You don't chase approval, and that alone makes them feel invisible. They depended on being admired. You don't even need to be seen. And here's the sickest part. They studied how to look powerful. You became powerful through pain. You didn't have to prove anything. You were the proof. That's what's breaking them down slowly. You're the walking contradiction to everything they believed about strength, confidence, and success. You're soft-spoken, but you carry storms. You don't beg to be noticed, yet all eyes shift when you step in. You're not loud, but your silence changes the energy in the entire room. That's real power, and that's what's scaring the hell out of them. Let's be real. They thought they were better than you. And maybe for a while they convinced everyone they were. But now they're choking on that arrogance because your existence forced them to look inward, and they didn't like what they saw. "What did you do to me?" they ask, half joking, half terrified. The answer? You breathed. You stood still. You lived your truth. And their masks started melting in the heat of your presence. That's why they flinch. That's why they side-eye. That's why they talk behind your back and lurk in your shadow. Because you didn't just show them who you are. You showed them who they're not. You didn't compete, yet they lost. You didn't attack, yet they bled. You didn't try to shine, yet you eclipsed them. And now they're left with a terrifying realization. You weren't even aiming for them, and still, you hit them dead center. Welcome to the chaos of being real in a world full of frauds. Chosen one. You didn't destroy their ego. You revealed its weakness. And once someone feels that, they never forget the feeling. Number 2. You didn't just wake them up. You made them remember what they buried. You didn't ruin their peace. You reminded them they never had any. You didn't just step into their life. You stepped into their psyche, into the parts they had carefully locked, silenced, and sealed with denial. And the moment you showed up, you lit a match in their mental vault. You triggered something ancient, not the kind of memory tied to stories or timelines, but something soul deep, something they tried to forget. And now, thanks to you, it won't go back to sleep. You reminded them of who they were before the world taught them to shrink, before they traded their spark for survival, before they buried their truth under trends, trauma, and ego. That's why they flinch when you speak. That's why your presence feels like pressure they can't name, because you didn't just show up as a person, you showed up as a mirror. You didn't say a word, but somehow they heard everything they've been trying to forget. You speak with clarity, and that clarity feels like a slap to people who've been faking confidence. They spent years building identities off noise, distraction, and performance. You showed up calm, grounded, real. And suddenly, all their noise felt like static. All their moves felt forced. Because you weren't moving to impress. You were moving in alignment. And that's the kind of thing no tutorial can teach. Imagine this. Someone's been asleep for years, surrounded by comforting lies, soft illusions, and carefully crafted stories about who they are. Then you walk in, eyes wide open, energy sharp, voice clean, and suddenly the dream doesn't feel safe anymore. You didn't scream, you didn't preach, you just existed, and now they're haunted by the truth your presence carries. Because deep down, they saw something in you they remember from themselves before the world taught them to forget. They don't hate you because you're confident. They hate that your confidence is real, that it wasn't bought or borrowed or stolen. It was earned in silence, built in the shadows. You carry a light that didn't come from approval. It came from pain that didn't kill you. And that light, it triggers every part of them that went dim years ago. You didn't trigger them. You activated the version of them they abandoned to fit in. Now they're confused, angry, obsessed, not with you, but with the version of themselves they see in your reflection. That's why they act strange. That's why their compliments feel backhanded. That's why one moment they're drawn to you, and the next they distance themselves like you're dangerous, because they don't know if they want to be you, or destroy the part of you that reminds them who they used to be. Imagine this. Someone's been faking strength for so long, they forgot what real strength even feels like. And then you show up, moving like still water, soft but unshakable, and it rattles them, because they realize all their performance has no weight, no soul, no truth. They aren't grounded, they're floating in an image. And you're rooted in something they lost a long time ago. You weren't trying to call them out. You were just being you. But that's what makes it worse, because if you had come with arrogance, they could dismiss you. If you were loud, they could label you as dramatic. But you were calm, focused, centered, and that made you undeniable. And that's when the panic started. You became a walking reminder of what they traded away for comfort. They're not mad that you exist. They're mad that your existence makes them question their own. Because the way you move makes them feel like they've been walking in circles. The way you speak makes their words feel empty. You don't just walk in the room, you change the temperature. And they don't know if they should respect it or run from it. Imagine this. Someone has carefully built a house of cards, and you walk by, not touching anything, and the whole thing starts shaking. That's what your energy does. It doesn't attack, it reveals. And when you've built your entire life on denial, truth feels violent. You didn't hurt them, you just showed them the cracks. You weren't supposed to exist, not like this, not this real, not this whole, not this awake, because your presence proves it's possible to come back from the dark with power. It proves that silence can become strength, that you don't need approval to have purpose. And if you're proof, what does that make them? That question is what's tearing them apart. They want your peace, but not your process. They want your energy, but not your scars. They want your glow, but not the grief it took to get it. So instead of healing, they attack. Instead of learning, they mock. Because it's easier to destroy the mirror than to face what it reflects. They'll say you're too much, that you think you're better, that you're changing. But really, they're just trying to explain away their discomfort, because once you see something real, you can't unsee it. And now they've seen you, the real you, and every time you show up, it reminds them that they've been sleepwalking. They were content in spiritual amnesia until you woke them up. But here's the part they'll never say. They needed you, not to fix them, not to lead them, but to remind them of the voice they ignored, of the path they abandoned, of the version of themselves that still exists beneath all the noise. You are the wake-up call they didn't ask for, but can't silence. So no, you didn't ruin anything. You didn't confuse them. You didn't break them. You just showed them what they lost. And now they don't know whether to thank you or hate you. That's the curse of being chosen. You don't just inspire, you disturb. You don't just light up a room, you expose the dust. And people don't always want clarity. Sometimes they want the comfort of the lie. But don't dim yourself to keep their illusions intact. Because every time you show up in your truth, you make it harder for them to stay asleep. And even if they don't thank you now, even if they run, mock, or project, the seed has already been planted. You reminded them of their original design, and nothing will ever feel the same again. Number 3. You proved their manipulation has an expiration date. They don't panic when they lose control of the situation. They panic when they lose control of you. They thought you'd fold, that you'd flinch when they gave you the silent treatment, that the guilt trips, gaslighting, and emotional booby traps would keep working forever. But this time, you didn't take the bait. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You just went silent. And that silence, it cracked their entire illusion of power. They weren't ready for your stillness. They were used to your reactions, the emotional supply, the explanations, the way you used to beg for clarity. But now, you watched them act out and said nothing. You didn't fight back. You didn't break. You just withdrew your energy. And suddenly, their control fell apart like a puppet with the strings cut. You didn't destroy them. You just stopped participating in your own manipulation. That's what really broke them. Your peace exposed their performance. The moment you stopped defending yourself, they started unraveling. Because what do manipulators become when they no longer have access to your emotions? Powerless, unimportant, forgotten. Imagine this. Someone's been yanking your strings for years like you're some emotional marionette. Then one day, the strings go limp. No reaction, no tears, no panic, just silence. That's what you did. And now they're standing there, staring at their own reflection in the ruins of a game you refused to play. They thought you'd never see it, but now you do. You see the pattern, the tactics, the games, and the craziest part, you didn't expose them publicly. You didn't try to humiliate them. You just outgrew the script they were counting on. You evolved, and when you evolve, manipulation expires. They used to feel powerful when you were confused. Now they're terrified because you're calm. You outgrew their control, and they've never felt smaller. So let them say you changed. Let them say you're cold. They're just mad the playbook stopped working. You're not heartless, you're healed. And healing, to manipulators, feels like rebellion. You didn't fight them, you just stopped feeding them. And they'll never recover from starving on the silence of someone they once fed off of daily. Number 4, your rawness ripped off their mask. You weren't trying to expose them, but the truth in you made the lie in them sweat. You never faked it. That's what rattles them. You didn't rehearse who you are. You just showed up, unfiltered, unmasked, fully real. And for people who've built their whole identity on applause and pretend smiles, that's terrifying. Because nothing shatters illusion faster than authenticity standing in the same room. They've spent years learning how to look happy, appear confident, and seem powerful. But you never needed a script. You walk in carrying pain like a badge, scars like ink, and truth like a torch, and it burns straight through their costumes. Your energy makes their performance look like a parody. You're not intimidating. You're just proof that fake confidence doesn't stand a chance around real strength. Imagine this. Someone spends hours painting a fake masterpiece on a wall. Then you walk by, holding the actual thing. No bragging, no loud entrance, just presence. And suddenly, everyone stops admiring the wall. They start wondering why it ever impressed them. That's what your authenticity does. They hate that your voice doesn't shake, that your eyes don't dodge, that your spirit doesn't bend to trends. And no matter how hard they try to replicate what you have, they can't, because what you have isn't copied, it's carved. Through pain, through failure, through deep, brutal honesty with yourself. They hide behind filters. You bleed truth. That's why they call it too much. Because it is, for them. It's not your confidence that bothers them, it's your freedom. You don't just live outside the box, you burn the box. And that level of self-possession makes people who rely on validation start questioning everything they've built. You didn't just walk into their space, you rearranged the atmosphere without saying a word. So when they mock, when they minimize, when they twist your strength into arrogance, don't flinch. You're not the problem. You're the reflection. The one thing they can't filter, mute, or outshine. You didn't embarrass them. You just reminded them they've been faking what you were born with. Number 5. You move like you've got clearance they'll never earn. They can fake the look, the words, the status, but not the access. You're not moving like everyone else, and they know it. You're not loud, but doors open. You're not flashy, but eyes follow. You didn't beg for permission, yet rooms shift when you enter. That's not luck. That's not ego. That's clearance, and it's killing them softly. They've spent years collecting credentials, perfecting appearances, chasing recognition like a trophy hunt. You just showed up. No clout chasing, no resume flashing, no rehearsed lines. You walk in like you belong. And That's what pisses them off, because deep down, they know they're doing everything right and still can't touch what you carry by default. You didn't climb their ladder, you walked through a door they didn't even know existed. Imagine this. They're standing in line with a clipboard, waiting to be let in, and you bypass the crowd, nod once, and the gate swings open. No ID check, no applause, just presence. It doesn't make sense to them because they've only ever operated through hustle and hierarchy, but you're moving with something they can't copy, internal permission. That's why they gossip. That's why they question your worth. That's why they whisper, who do they think they are? Because what they're really saying is, why does the universe respect them more than me? Your presence is a backstage pass to places they'll never be invited, because authenticity was the price of entry. And let's be clear, it's not that you think you're better, it's that you're not faking power, you're carrying it, quietly, unshakably. You're not trying to prove anything, and that's why everything proves itself through you. That's what eats at them. They've built whole identities off validation, and yet your energy alone makes their resume look like a cover story. So keep walking like you own the floor, even when they try to trip you. They're not mad at your moves. They're mad that no matter what they do, they can't duplicate the keys you hold. Number 6. You move like a mind reader, and it terrifies them. You don't play their game because you already read the rulebook, spotted the traps, and burned the whole thing. They expect fireworks, a meltdown, a comeback rant, but instead, silence, stillness, strategy. You sit back and watch, and that's what drives them insane. Because you don't operate off impulse, you operate off intel. They can't bait someone who's already 10 steps ahead. You see through people, not because you're paranoid, but because you've been betrayed by smiles too many times. You don't just hear what they say, you track what they avoid. You don't fall for their tone, you decode their intent. That's not cold. That's wisdom forged from emotional war. They call you hard to read because you don't bleed on command anymore. Imagine this. They've been setting traps with tone, guilt, and gaslighting for years. And here you come, unshaken, quiet, centered. You listen with your eyes. You watch with your spirit. Every fake laugh, every guilt-charged pause, you catch it. Before they even finish the sentence, you've already seen the blueprint. They say you're cold. No, you're calm. You've been through enough to know that exploding only gives them ammo. They want chaos. You give them clarity, and clarity kills manipulation. They don't know how to fight someone who refuses to swing. You mastered yourself, so they can't master you. That's emotional intelligence. It's not softness, it's silent dominance. You don't match energy, you measure it. You don't explain, you observe. And nothing scares a manipulator more than someone who doesn't react. Because it means their power has expired. You're not detached, you're evolved. You don't avoid emotions. You understand them deeply. You just no longer let them be hijacked by people who weaponize kindness and twist empathy into control. They want you to flinch, you smile instead. They want you to snap, you nod and walk. Because you've learned real power doesn't perform, it predicts. And you see it all coming. That's why they're rattled. They can fake emotions all day, but they'll never match the silence of someone who's already read the room before they even opened their mouth. Number 7. Your silence hits harder than their loudest lies. They wanted a reaction. You gave them a reckoning. They thought your silence meant surrender, that not speaking up meant you had nothing to say. But what they didn't understand is this: your silence isn't absence, it's surgical. You don't speak to be heard. You speak to cut. And when you go quiet, it's not because you're powerless, it's because you're preparing precision. You don't waste breath proving what time will expose. You're not here to out-yell anyone. While they're busy performing, you're analyzing, measuring, peeling back every word, every motive, every angle. That's why they're nervous. Because silence from someone like you isn't retreat, it's calculation. Your silence slices through facades louder than their loudest tantrums ever could. Imagine this: a courtroom full of noise, fake evidence, dramatic speeches, and then one sharp pause from the judge. Everyone freezes. That's you. You walk in with stillness, and somehow the whole room shifts. Because they know your silence isn't passive, it's a verdict. You've seen through them, and your lack of response is the loudest statement possible. They want you to explain yourself, to argue, to play their game, but you've evolved past the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You realized some people aren't worth the energy it takes to correct them. And that realization, it's lethal to their control. You don't need closure from chaos. You already wrote your own ending, in silence. They don't fear your words. They fear what you withhold, because they depended on your reaction to feel relevant. Now they're screaming into the void, hoping you'll break character. But you won't. You've seen what noise does. It distracts. You're not here to distract. You're here to disarm. So let them rant. Let them spin. Let them drown in the echo of their own chaos. Your silence isn't weakness, it's weaponized truth. And truth doesn't yell, it just stands until everything fake collapses around it. Number 8. You didn't break them, you just took back the mirror. They didn't miss you. They missed who they got to pretend to be while standing next to you. They were never in love with your soul. They were in love with the feeling they got from orbiting your light. You weren't their equal. You were their reflection. And the second you walked away, their whole illusion of being irreplaceable shattered like cheap glass under pressure. That's what really broke them. They never saw you clearly. They saw themselves looking better beside you. You were the boost, the backdrop, the energy source that made them feel more important, more attractive, more powerful. But they confused access with ownership. And now that you've gone silent, now that you've disappeared, they're scrambling, because what they lost wasn't just you. It was the only version of themselves they ever liked. They weren't addicted to your love. They were addicted to the identity they borrowed from your presence. Imagine this: someone puts on a crown every time you walk in the room, pretending it was always theirs. But the moment you leave, the crown slips. And suddenly, they don't feel royal anymore. That's what your exit did. It didn't just create space, it ripped away the fantasy. They're chasing shadows now, trying to find someone else who makes them feel enough. But it's not working, because you were never just a person. They treated you like a stage where they could perform, feel big, feel seen. And now the stage is gone, and the lights are out. They called you replaceable, until they realized the version of themselves they liked most only existed next to you. That's the brutal truth. You didn't reject them. You removed the illusion. You made them confront the fact that their confidence was codependent, that their charm had a host, that their importance was propped up by your energy. Now they're hollow, not because you took something from them, but because you gave something real, and they never knew how to value it. What they miss isn't love. It's the power they felt leeching off of your light. But the source is gone now. and so is the fantasy. Number 9. You read energies. Like a language, they can't even sound out the alphabet. They lie with their words. You catch them with your silence. You don't need receipts. You don't need proof. You feel it. Before the fake laugh, before the twisted compliment, before the betrayal even forms in their mind, you've already felt the shift. That's what rattles them. You read energy like it's your first language, while they're still stuck trying to sound out the vibe. You catch the sigh behind the smile, the resentment hiding in politeness, the fear tucked under their bragging. You know what people mean, even when they don't. That kind of spiritual fluency, it's not common, and it makes people nervous because you can't be manipulated, seduced, or spun in circles when you already see the spin coming. They tried to lie, but your intuition already filed the report. Imagine this. Someone walks in with perfect posture, saying all the right things, but you catch the twitch in their eye, the slight tension in their voice, the flicker of unease in their energy. Everyone else is fooled. You're not, because while they perform on stage, you're tuned in to the frequency, and their vibe is off, way off. That's why they don't like being around you for too long. They feel seen, not in the wow you get me way, in the I can't hide from you way. And people who survive off pretense can't stand being around those who see past it. You're not guessing their intentions. You know. You feel the shift in the room before a single word is spoken, and no mask can cover energy. They can't explain how you know, so they call it paranoia. They call you too intense, but really, they're just mad they can't lie to you like they lie to everyone else. Your presence is a walking truth detector, and for people who thrive in illusion, that's terrifying. So let them stumble through their facade. You're already 10 steps ahead. Chosen one, they're speaking surface. You're reading soul. Number 10. Your boundaries are battle-tested and bulletproof. Your no doesn't shake. It slams like a gate that was welded shut by every betrayal you survived. These aren't petty limits. These are sacred thresholds forged in the fire of every time you were used, drained, dismissed, or disrespected. People think you're cold. No, you're clear. And that clarity scares the hell out of people who got comfortable crossing lines that should have never been drawn in pencil. You used to bend. You used to explain. You used to give second, third, and fourth chances. Not anymore. Now your peace is protected like a vault, and your time, sacred, your energy, guarded like a crown jewel. You're not just protecting your space, you're protecting your mission. They don't miss the access, they miss the control they had when you had none. Imagine this. Someone walks into a temple expecting to touch everything, and then realizes they're not even allowed past the gates. That's what your presence feels like now. Exclusive, sealed, untouchable without reverence. They mistake your stillness for coldness, but they don't understand. You bled for that silence. You earned the right to guard it. They can't manipulate someone who no longer needs approval. That's what terrifies them. You don't flinch when they pull back. You don't chase when they withdraw. Your boundaries are no longer negotiable because you finally understand the cost of letting the wrong energy stay too long. Your boundaries are not walls to block love. They are doors with locks to protect your purpose. People who've never respected their own peace will always attack yours. They'll say you're harsh, that you've changed. No, you've healed. And healing taught you that love without boundaries isn't love. It's sacrifice. You're not cruel. You're done bleeding for people who call it devotion while draining you dry. Let them whine. Let them sulk. Let them label you whatever helps them cope with the fact that you no longer bend. Your no isn't up for debate. It's a final answer from someone who finally remembers their worth. And now that you've drawn the line, they're realizing they were never invited past it. Number 11. You outlived their lies, and that's what's killing them now. They threw dirt on your name, hoping it would bury you, but didn't realize they just planted something they'll never be able to kill. They didn't just come for your reputation. They came for your soul, your peace, your identity. They whispered in rooms you weren't in, twisted your words, painted you as something you're not, all because your existence made them feel small. But here's what they never saw coming. Your silence became strategy, and your survival, that became the final nail in their delusion. You didn't fight back with drama. You didn't get messy. You just stayed the course and let the truth breathe. And like it always does, it outlived the noise. Your growth turned their gossip into background noise. Imagine this. They built an entire narrative about you, expecting the crowd to believe it. But while they were talking, you were building, evolving, rising. And now your life is louder than their lies. Your peace is louder than their pettiness. Your progress is the receipt they never wanted exposed. They called you fake, but now you're glowing in authenticity. They labeled you unstable, but now you're standing firmer than ever. They tried to reduce you to their version of the story, but you walked out of the book and wrote a whole new one. And now they're stuck rereading chapters they can't rewrite. The smear campaign didn't stain you. It spotlighted what they feared most, your unstoppable spirit. They expected you to crumble, to beg, to break, but all they did was create more attention, more eyes, more energy focused on you. And when people looked deeper, they didn't find a villain. They found a survivor. You didn't just bounce back, you broke through. And now, every success you earn screams in the faces of those who tried to silence you. They can't unsee your glow. They can't undo your rise, because you didn't just survive the attack, you outgrew the battlefield. They buried you, but you were never meant to stay underground. You were meant to root, rise, and become proof that no smear, no lie, no rumor can stop a soul aligned with truth. Number 12, you're operating on ancient frequency, and it scrambles their system. They can't decode you because you weren't downloaded, you were remembered. You don't speak like the world taught you. You speak like you came back with memories no one else remembers. Your wisdom doesn't sound rehearsed, it hits like déjà vu, and that's what short-circuits them. Because you're not repeating trends, chasing likes, or echoing crowd noise. You're channeling something timeless, something older than ego and louder than logic. They don't understand how you know what you know. They think knowledge comes from textbooks, degrees, and titles, but you speak like the blueprint itself. While they scramble for answers, you just know. And that kind of knowing, it makes people uncomfortable. They can't box you in because you were never part of their factory. Imagine this. They're all tuned to the same frequency, status, image, control, and you walk in like a storm of static, not chaotic, just unreadable. You don't play their game, and you don't need their rulebook. Your value doesn't come from the external. It radiates from the core. They measure everything by what they can show off. You move based on what aligns with your soul. While they chase relevance, you embody resonance. And when someone is that aligned, it fries the circuits of people still trying to figure it out. You trigger them because you're proof there's another way to exist, one that doesn't revolve around applause or performance. You're not just different, you're disruptive. You're reminding people of something their soul recognizes, but their mind forgot. You don't just carry ancient codes, you are the code. And it's glitching their entire simulation. They mock what they don't understand, so they'll label you weird, out of touch, mysterious. But deep down, they know there's something real about you that they can't explain. And worse, they can't imitate. You're not from this timeline, and they feel it. You don't just walk into rooms, you shift timelines. You don't just speak truth, you activate memory. And people who depend on illusions. They can't survive too long around that. So let them malfunction, let them project. You weren't sent here to blend in. You were sent here to remind the world what it forgot. Number 13. You're playing a game they don't even know exists. They hate that you're winning because according to their rules, you weren't supposed to make it out alive. They built their reality on predictable cycles: do wrong, get punished; play nice, get rewarded; cause and effect, input and output. They thought life was a vending machine. Press the right buttons and success drops down. But then you showed up, and everything short-circuited. You've been betrayed, hated, overlooked, lied on, and still, somehow, you rise. Not once, not by accident, consistently. And to people stuck in ego-based systems, that's terrifying. Because your wins can't be explained by effort alone. Your glow isn't powered by public approval. You're not running on luck, you're running on alignment. And alignment, that's not something they can fake, hack, or force. You don't operate on karma, you operate on calling, and that makes you untouchable. Imagine this. They're playing checkers, thinking they've got the board figured out. Predictable moves, calculated attacks. But you're not even on the board. You're building new ones. While they're worried about reputation and revenge, you're walking through fire untouched, doors flying open, blessings hitting like clockwork. And they can't figure out why. Because you're not here to repeat cycles, you're here to break them. They expected your downfall. They even tried to orchestrate it, but nothing worked. Because you're not looped into their karmic system. You didn't rise by stepping on others. You rose because you refused to become like them. You chose growth over revenge, truth over games, healing over performance. That's not luck. That's destiny in motion. They can't measure your steps because your path isn't math. It's divine geometry. That's why they're confused. You shouldn't be glowing. Not after what you've been through, not after how they tried to ruin you, but here you are, calm, rising, untouchable, and it eats them alive, because it proves their rules don't apply to you. You exist on your own terms, in your own rhythm, guided by something they can't touch, decode, or destroy. So let them watch, let them calculate, let them obsess. You were never made to fit their formula. You were born to shatter it. Number 14. You didn't just win. You outgrew the battlefield. They trained for a war you walked away from, and that's what destroyed them. They were ready for a fight, ready for drama, for a back and forth, for you to crawl into the mud and play dirty with them. But you didn't swing back. You didn't throw dirt. You outgrew the entire game. While they stayed tangled in ego, you elevated, quietly, powerfully, permanently. You didn't rise by revenge. You rose by release. They wanted you to stay broken, bitter, reactive, but you chose healing, and healing made you untouchable, not because you're avoiding pain, but because you turned pain into wisdom. You didn't just survive what they did to you, you ascended through it, and now they can't even reach you without choking on the dust you left behind. They studied your downfall. You were studying your becoming. Imagine this. They're standing in the pit they dug for you, still holding a shovel, while you're up in the sky, planting seeds in new soil. They can't believe it. They wanted you to lose, to react, to crumble. But instead, you glowed up in silence and left them talking to your shadow. You didn't win in the way they understand victory. You didn't beat them at their own game. You quit the game entirely, and that's the one move their ego was never ready for, because it proves something brutal. They never had power over you, just access. And now that it's revoked, they're exposed, shrinking, scrambling, alone in a war that no longer includes you. You became the version of yourself they swore you'd never reach, without ever becoming like them. That's what stings the most. That you didn't become cruel, you didn't become petty, you didn't try to ruin them. You just became more you, more focused, more elevated, more whole. And that wholeness? It's louder than any comeback you could have delivered. You didn't win the fight. You ascended beyond the need for one. And now, while they rot in the mess they made for you, you're out here rising like you were born to leave them behind. And if you're still here, chosen one, this message was meant for you. You didn't just watch, you felt this. So don't leave without pressing that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you're not already part of the family, go ahead and smash that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. This isn't just content, it's a movement. Stay sharp, stay real, and I'll see you in the next one.